Welcome to V is for Victory, a podcast about how small businesses overcome big battles. I'm your host, Jill Miller of Vera Creative, a boutique marketing firm in the Chicagoland area where I'm also a part-time professor of an advertising course. Join me as I talk with entrepreneurs about the challenges they face as well as their strategies for success. Hey guys, let's face it. The excitement of hosting a podcast can start to wear off. I get it. It's a ton of work for what can be very little reward. However, if you're looking to grow your audience and profit from your efforts, contact Podcast Media Machine, experts at design, production, and podcast management. Visit podcastmediamachine.com and let them know that Jill sent you. Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of V is for Victory. I'm here with Mark Karetskiy. He is a mortgage lender. He's the team lead loan officer. Super excited to talk to you today, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So we talked a little bit before the show about the fact that you have a very well-rounded, robust, background that doesn't include just real estate and mortgage lending. I've heard a few things about you here and there, picked it up from conversations online in a group we're both in about some really exciting things you've done in your past. So who is Mark? Tell me about yourself.
Oh, Mark is somebody that hates and does not believe in living in comfort zones. It all really started when I was a little kid and I was talking to my parents and they looked down at me and they're like, "Hey, we're moving to America." And that was 6 days before my 7th birthday. And so I was born in Russia, of all places, especially given everything that's going on in the world today. And so I moved to America not knowing any English and really not knowing anybody and having to figure it out, right? And that's really been the theme throughout my entire life. I somehow have built up the confidence in myself to where the further I throw myself out there, the more I learn about myself and the more successful I become.
I love that. I have to ask because I have some German friends and I have some Greek friends that all learned English from Sesame Street.
I was Dragon Tales. There was definitely Sesame Street. That's so funny that you bring that up because I moved like right as the school year was ending. And so I had all summer with nobody and no English, but we had a TV and it was like the first time we had a color TV in my life, right? So as a kid, I'm like, this is amazing. But I couldn't understand a damn thing. So that's really how I learned English, was just watching cartoons.
And then did your parents know English or they had to immerse themselves into the culture and everything as well?
They were taught like British English.
Yeah. Okay.
What they learned and like the way that they communicate sometimes still to this day, whatever, 23 years later, it's still like, it just doesn't sound right.
It's British English with a Russian accent.
Yeah. Well, that's what they teach in Europe, right? Like,
yeah.
If you're going to learn English, they're not going to teach you and think about throughout America, right? And I grew up in Boston. I went to school in New Hampshire. I lived outside of DC and Baltimore before I came to Dallas in 2018. And so we have a lot of different cultures here and a lot of different dialects and like, the way that we speak, never mind the actual like vocabulary that we use, it's all different depending on where we are.
Yeah, that's so true. So I'm from northern Wisconsin and everybody looks the same, talks the same, dress the same. Everybody's the same, right? So I move at I think I was 19 when I came down to Chicago and I started at a community college. And I remember trying to get instructions on what to do. And people were speaking perfectly fine English, but my ears had never heard English with any sort of accent spoken to it. And I remember just going home and calling my mom and crying. I'm like, I don't know what they're trying to tell me to do. I can't understand them. Like, so sheltered. I don't think I ever even had a burrito until I moved to Chicago.
And imagine me going from Russia to Boston and trying to understand what they were telling me there.
What did they tell you the reason for the move was, and what year was that?
It was 99. So I didn't learn this for a really long time, but technically we were Jewish refugees to America. Like that was our immigration status.
Oh, wow.
But it was really, my brother's 9 years older than me. and he was turning 18. And they, like most countries in the world, have a 2-year military service. We were the poorest. And so we were basically the last ones out. We had a lot of family in Boston and New York and Arizona because, hey, guess what? Communism drives people in every which direction away from it. And so we were just one of the last ones to get out of there.
Do you have anything you want to comment on what you see happening today in America? Do you see parallels? Do you see a push towards communism, or do you not want to go there?
How much do you want to go to? Because
I'm open. I want to get your take on it because I think it's actually more important for I think we have had it so good here for so long and it's has spoiled us. And so maybe these other types of everybody on an equal playing field or however the hell they spin communism, I don't even know, because I'm not for it. But, I think it's important for people to hear firsthand from someone who's experienced it, lived it, been crushed by it.
well, the reality is I was born in 92.
Yeah,
So in reality, like
you're
I
young.
didn't live in communism, right? Like if the wall fell and the union broke up right before I was born. But the reality of the situation there was we were living in a post-communist country, which was really like a technocracy. Like who knows what it was back then. It was really before Putin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, the entire that's why I started there. I mean, it defines it is part of my worldview, right? And it's part of to me what's so fascinating. Like I'm a geopolitics nerd. So I went to school for economics, which was focused on global trade and finance. And I studied about like the major multinational corporations and how they actually operate. And then I dual majored in international affairs. And before becoming a mortgage banker, I seriously thought about going counterintelligence and actually interviewed with the State Department. And really, I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted, which was going to be to do counterintelligence versus Russia. I was going to have to go to do it, whether Ukraine or one of the Baltics. I, in 2013, wrote a paper on the EU's reliance on Russian gas and the hotspot it created in Ukraine. And in 2014 is when Ukraine had their revolution. And to go back in time even further, my grandpa was an orphan from Ukraine because of the Holocaust and the Nazis stormed through Ukraine. And so he was moved to an orphanage in Moscow. And so that's really how we came from Moscow, right?
Okay.
And so with everything going on, like it's a lot to take in because I understand so much of it, but so much of what's going on is just political power structure and struggle. And the actual like mechanisms behind all of that to me is all fascinating. But
Do you see it even being possible to be implemented here in the United States ever at any point in time?
full out communism,
Yeah.
I I, I hope to God not. Well, I mean, this is the last beacon, like for all of us, right? Like there is nowhere else to go. You look at what's going on in Canada, you look at what's going on in Australia, the so-called free world, like we are the freest and what we have cannot be taken for granted. I think I've talked about this with so many people, but we just mentioned like the 2-year military service that most countries have.
Yep.
I feel like what we should really have instead of college is a 2-year mandatory like Peace Corps or some sort of outside the country community service, because that in and of itself would change really all of the younger generations and populations and actually bring back some of the American ideals that we should be teaching. What's crazy about all of this is a lot of this can get traced back to the KGB and really what their intention was in the Cold War. And it was to re-educate the kids, which meant getting their supporters within the schools and educating generations until enough generations were taught enough un-American ideals that they toppled themselves, right? And so that's what we're seeing today in reality. And it's a massive struggle that's going on. And it's why I'm so happy to be in Texas, because it feels like it is night and day. The worlds that my family and my friends that are still in the Northeast live relative to the world that we live in, it's completely different, right? And so I can see all of the different pain points and actual data points, and I can actually see the picture and what's going on. And so is it possible? Absolutely. But there's a lot of blue blooded Americans that are going to have a lot to say about it before that happens.
Right. Yeah. I'm really glad you brought up the schools. So the other day, I actually saw an article that said something like, you know, daughter's heiress mother, okay, rich mom, pays to have her daughter like unindoctrinated from college, essentially was the headline. And the article was, they had interviewed the daughter, and she was saying like, yeah, I went to this college and it was like, I didn't realize it at the time, but it totally estranged me from my family. I had professors telling me not to go home for the holidays, to stay with them, that my parents didn't understand me, that I was oppressed, that I was, because I'm a woman, I have all these things going against me. And I think it was a predominantly girls, like all girls college or something like that, that she went to. And it took like years and years of therapy of her mom paying like $300 a day or something like that to like reverse her mind and reverse her thinking to like that she wasn't this downtrodden, woman. She was actually from a very affluent family with lots of opportunities available to her. And I just thought that that was so incredibly interesting, because I remember, again, like I grew up in Wisconsin, moved to Chicago. Parents hated that. My dad is about as conservative as they could ever be, sold guns for a living, like, okay, so we're I definitely came with like, it sounds bad, like I came with more of an open mind, but then once I started seeing some of the themes and some of the things that maybe my parents had said to me growing up, I'm like, you know what, they're actually right. Now that I'm here and I'm seeing it and experiencing it firsthand, like I get it. And so I did 6 years of college, because I have a master's in undergrad. So 6 years of college. And the fact that I got out and don't send my kid to a public school, that I homeschool my child, I think is incredible. I'm actually super proud of it. I'm proud that I didn't like really get swept away into that whole kind of culture. And I teach at a university, so I can say that I see this. I see what's going on with the younger generations. I see their struggles. They're burnt out, they're stressed out, they're going in a million different directions, and they're excuse driven, and they're do-over people. They expect do-overs, and they expect,
Right.
It's like it's so different than like my ideals. So I want to, all of that to say, we have
Well,
talked about schools. Go ahead.
you bring up a really good point, which is those students need to take personal responsibility, but it's really we all need to take personal responsibility
Of the
the,
children, I mean, while they're
of
under
the
our
children of
care.
our communities, of
Yeah.
our leadership. And it's if we are one of the only countries in the world where if you feel like there is something wrong that is happening, you actually have the freedom of speech to say something out loud and actually say something about it. And then you can physically go out and you can do something about it, right? You can gather support. You can actually create a movement. You can actually create change right now. I'm going to caveat right now.
Yeah, right in this moment. Well, like I said, this isn't going to air until end of March, April. So, but no, I actually heard on the radio this morning, somebody is suing Kraft because on the like Velveeta, I don't know if that's Kraft, but on her macaroni and cheese box, it says it takes 3 minutes to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
But according to this woman who's suing the company for $5 million, it by the time you open the box and cook the noodles and mix in the cheese, it takes longer than 3 minutes. So talk about like having the opportunity, if you feel wronged, I mean, to do something about it.
But that I
It's to
mean,
an extreme in this country.
that is, and if it was against an individual, I'd have more of a feeling on it. But
Yeah.
but it's Kraft
Yeah.
or whoever it is, and like
They can afford it.
they could afford it, but they also have done things to deserve it and deserve more.
Well, right. I mean,
So power
just the
to her.
ingredient, just the ingredients in the macaroni and cheese is a crime.
It took time to come up with that one.
Oh man. Yeah. So, well, you're right about the whole personal responsibility piece. I mean, that's kind of lacking. Um, the other, my husband said he had an interview yesterday. Some younger kid was coming in, and I said, okay, well, watch him watch. You know, he's not even done with school yet. He's about to graduate. He has about a year experience working. And I said, watch him want it's a sales position. Watch him want 65K plus commission plus 5 weeks of paid vacation and to work from home. And then I get a text a few minutes later and my husband's like, you weren't far off from what he requested. And it's just like, no one wants to put in the time and pay their dues and really step up to that personal responsibility piece. And I think I have a lot of views. I have a lot of views. I think a lot of it is just removing religion removes a lot of the moral compass and moral code. So I think that's a big issue. That's another reason why we homeschool, because like every morning, my daughter, they take turns. Her and her 9 classmates take turns. They hold the flag, they put their hand over their hearts, they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, you don't get that in school. They're learning Bible verses, and she's 4 and starting to read, and but we don't mean they don't use iPads or TVs or anything like that, right? Like, and that's how I want my children to be educated. And go ahead, but we'll get there because I'm going to ask you about the school because I know you helped establish a school. So that's where I'm going with all
Not
this.
me personally, but I mean, education is critical, right? And it's indoctrination is real, but at the end of the day, like becoming curious is what I really think like it's the educational system's job to do, is to actually facilitate curiosity and figure out what is it that we're all different, right? And that's the beauty to it. And so education is critical to the future of everything, right? It's our future. And so we as a company, we do mortgages really well. We're one of the top 10 purchase mortgage lenders in the country. We help a lot of families get into homes and refinance homes. But at the end of the day, we believe in actually doing more than just mortgages. And so we're a Christian community, we're a Christian faith-based company. And so our mission statement is we exist to love and value people and be a movement of change. And that's where the name Movement Mortgage comes from. And so we're owned by our foundation as opposed to a hedge fund like most mortgage lenders are. And so when we make a profit, we get to say and do what we want to do with that profit. And so our foundation is a part of so many different things. We go on mission trips all over the world. We have farms in Kenya. We've built hope centers and we're super involved in Guatemala. But one of our big things, like I mentioned earlier, is schools, right? We're headquartered in the Carolinas. And little known fact, Charlotte is rated as the number 1 city or the worst city where if you are born into poverty, the chances of you leaving poverty are slim to none. And so that's where we started. And so our charter schools, we're up to 4 now, and we have a mission to build 100 in the next 10 years, which is a lofty goal. We'll be getting, we think Houston's going to be number 5. We think Dallas is going to be 7 or 8. But we're expanding from outside of just the general Charlotte area to now Georgia and all across the country. And so we're funding this entirely because the way that it works is really the government doesn't actually start to sponsor charter schools until a proven track record is involved or actually proven, right? And so we're literally going out and we're creating the change we want to see. And we believe that it starts with the schools.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, because when you talk about the school's responsibility to instill curiosity, I am very much in the thinking that the school is telling you what to think versus how to think. The how piece is the curiosity part
Exactly.
that's missing.
And that's
And
why I had such a difficult time in school. It was always the like, learn this, do this way. Like, if you don't show your work, then you don't get the grade. And it's like, well, I did it this way, and I don't care that that's not the way that you want me to do it. I got to the right answer faster. So
yeah,
that's the way I'm going with.
yeah,
And that
exactly.
leads directly into entrepreneurship, right? Like, we we can entrepreneurs are great at taking proven track models and actually improving them, but the biggest difficulty that I've seen for new entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, is really that problem solving ability, right? Never mind being able to actually go out from college or in college, look at the market, figure out what is a problem that they actually are curious in solving, but then what's the best way to solve it? And then what's the best way to market it? And what's the best way to fulfill it? Because we don't have necessarily these fill in the box, multiple choice, do this, that, next. We've got to create those for ourselves. And we don't get educated on that coming out of even higher level universities,
Yeah,
especially those, I would say.
yeah, and I feel like with entrepreneurs, you have to just be able to drop it and pivot, right? Like, you can't get crushed by failure, and you can't expect, like we talked about a little bit before, about do-overs. Like, you have to see when something isn't working and just move on and develop another way or a new way, or find a way, or connect with someone who has the way. But you have to be extremely
You have to create your
resourceful.
way. You
Yeah.
have to be 100% resourcefulness is massive, but I've seen so many entrepreneurs, like you were talking about with students, get really just overrun and overwhelmed and just lose their passion for what they're doing. And it's because they're not doing it the way that really naturally they should be, that would give them energy. It's taking energy.
Well, and I think a lot of that, again, it comes from, if you were in school, you were never pushed towards your passions. You come
No,
out of school, you don't even know what you're passionate about. It took me forever to figure out what I wanted to
that was one
do.
of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
What am I passionate? What do you mean? Like, I don't know. But it's something you've literally got to go out and figure out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you got to try a bunch of things to figure out what actually gives you, it'll pay you, yes, but what is actually giving you energy and allowing you to actually come back the next day renewed as opposed to drained.
And what did that process of figuring out what you were passionate about, like, what did that look like for you?
I mean, honestly, I got really lucky. Um, After I growing up, I all I knew was I wanted to be in business. And then coming out of school, I knew I wasn't going to go military because my immigrant parents would disown me, and I just terrible for
They're
them.
like, this is why we left.
Yeah, exactly. I realized at an early age I had some self awareness on me, and I realized that the counterintelligence path was not going to be the best with my inability to follow blind orders and keep my mouth shut.
Good for you.
And I wanted to become a financial advisor, but my self awareness told me, you don't trust yourself with your money. Why would somebody trust you with theirs? And then I got a terrible job lobbying. And what I was supposed to lobby locally was to shut down the local EPA plant. And after a week of that, I quit that job and applied to like 60 different jobs and got a call from a mortgage company that hired kids straight out of school. And actually, that was who they were targeting. And they were going to put you through a rigorous training. And if you passed the training, you were going to be able to graduate and be able to help homeowners take care of their debt. And that's literally what I did. And so it was a 2 week paid training. And at the end of 2 weeks, it was you have to go take the licensing test, and it has a really high fail rate. And I had to go drive 3 hours to go take my test. And after my test, I was going to have to go drive 4 hours to go home for Thanksgiving. And so I knew if I didn't pass that test, I didn't know if I was going to take that second trip. And so I passed the test and got through training, and all of a sudden was handed this like massive responsibility that I had no idea how to actually take care of. And I just kept failing forward and learning from each one of those mistakes, both that like I can now prevent with the experience, but also in understanding that there are so many things that are unpredictable in real estate and mortgage that ultimately, and my loan partner Jessica is probably so sick of me saying it, but we just need to control what we can control, and that's the only thing we need to focus on. And so we control what we can control very well at this point, but that has come through nothing but just learning with each failure and never making that same mistake twice.
And that's what you mean by fail forward, right? Like
Yeah.
not going backwards, not looking back. It's like, okay, kind of what I was talking about before. Like that didn't work, but can't wallow in it, right?
Yeah.
Can't like, you know, yeah, which I think is like a lot of entrepreneurs. Okay. So tell me about how you obviously connecting with the realtors is really important in your industry, but how do you network? How do you market yourself? How do you generate your leads in your business?
So what's crazy is really it's all come organically, and it's come from I'm surprised I didn't mention it earlier, but like the way I do things in life is I just try to go out and break things. And if they don't break, then I know they work. And then I just keep doing those. And so I came out here in 2018. I had been doing mortgages for 4 years. I'd helped over 100 homeowners refinance and take care of their debt. I had never worked with a purchase client outside of a coworker. I'd never spoken with a real estate agent. I had never generated my
Oh,
own
wow.
business.
Mm-hmm.
I had never, I didn't know what I didn't know again, right? After 4 years of like fine crafting or fine tuning my craft, I again knew nothing. And so I came out here with no Texas license, didn't know a single person here. And I was 100% self sourced, commission based. And if I don't bring in business, then I don't get paid. And so the way that I've been able to really attract people to me is by being myself and just building the personal brand of just who I am, but also my ability to actually perform under pressure, think outside the box to get really good deals put together to actually help agents in advancing their business and their goals. And at the end of the day, just not being Jake from State Farm, but being Mark, where you know he's a badass and he'll have some jokes and he'll call you and you guys will have fun when you guys hang out.
I love that. A couple things in there that I love. First of all, was it movement that moved you then to Texas? Like the
I moved here based off of an ex. And so we came here like 6 months later. I was like, you are not actually, I'm not going to marry you. And so we're going to break up now. And so I blew up my entire life. And it was amazing. It was the greatest thing I ever could have done. But at the same time, I when I came out here, no, I didn't actually like Movement was the company that I felt like my our core values very much aligned. The way that we do things makes the most amount of sense for me as a loan officer, and so that was really the decision that was made. But it could have been any other company.
Okay. All right. So you talked a little bit about authenticity, confidence, and being able to perform under pressure. And I think that that I know, and with a lot of my students, is that's a thing that's definitely kind of lacking. And the way that my course is designed is to kind of put them under pressure. So these are mostly art or business students that I pair up with each other so they can learn the art students can learn from the business students, and the business students can learn from the art students, because
Yeah.
it's two completely separate sides of the brain. So I love teaching my course because I get to bring those two worlds together. And in advertising, it's an advertising course. You got to have both, right? You got to have the business sense and you got to have the creative mind. So, I give them a ton of feedback in ways that I don't think other instructors have done before. I talk about their posture, I talk about their eye contact, I talk about a lot of things as they're presenting. And at the end of the year, they have to pitch an entire campaign to an actual client. And they're shitting in their pants all semester about it. Like they're, you know what I mean? Like it's a big deal. I make it a big deal because it is a big deal.
You
And I
have to
tell
do
them,
scary things.
you do. And I tell them, I'm like, and listen, you're representing me. If you don't do well, that's on me. Like, right. So anyways, but I see that a lot of people have they struggle to perform under pressure. They kind of crack under that pressure. What is it that you have found has been helpful? Were you born with it? I feel like I'm also very good under pressure. I was a gymnast, though. I feel like that comes from my
And I think
sport.
I think a lot of it does come from sports. I played hockey my entire life. I was always the smallest kid and the captain and like one of the best players. And so none of that came from just like my ability. It came from just working really hard and putting myself outside the box and actually allowing myself to get that experience of feeling uncomfortable, right? Like there's nothing like going to a batter's box and you've got a really good pitcher out there and it's you versus him, and like besides boxing and like fighting, like there's nothing that's more one-on-one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we have. Actually, I guess my tennis players will be like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I think it comes naturally to me. I love the disc assessment. I'm a 99I and I'm a 98S, and which is weird. Like you don't really get those, but like I'm just the cool, calm, collected team player. Like one of my other assessments was like, you're the captain. Like you want the team to be doing well and give you the life's problems. And I tell my clients and my agents the same thing. Like we've become one of the top rescue lenders here in Texas. And so about a quarter of the clients we work with, they're coming to us in a distressed situation because their lender is not performing for one reason or another. And we're being asked to come in, and whether it be a 10-day close or a 2-week close, but to basically keep the same timelines. And so I tell them, listen, you give me everything that we need and you give me 48 hours, just give me all of your problems. Give me 48 hours and you will have them all solved.
Can you have you can have all my problems.
You will have a solution. And if it's not solvable, like you'll have a direct answer of no, you can't do this. You need to stop spinning your wheels. Right. And so that's just who I am. But at the same time, it's my ability to step outside the comfort zone is not because I'm not afraid to step out of the comfort zone. It's because I actually lean towards that when I feel that any sort of fear of doing something, I know that's the reason why I need to go do it. That's the reason why when 75 Hard came about in 2019 and I laughed and was like, don't even do it. Like, I know how important the things we say to ourselves are. And I was like, you simply just don't have that discipline, and don't start this because you're going to fail it. And that's not good for you. And then this year I got blindly asked, do you want to do 75 Hard at the gym? And I just looked up and said, yeah, let's do it. And it was because innately I knew I had that fear of that discipline and can you actually do it? And I finally was able to step past that fear and say, I'm going to do it in spite of it.
I love that. Stepping outside the comfort zone is something that we have talked about, that my yoga teacher talks about all the time. I mean, this is what the whole, I thought I was going off to a week-long training to learn how to teach yoga, but that was a joke. You don't, you learn how to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
is what you learn.
Yeah.
It's an incredible experience. Very, very empowering. Do you CrossFit? What's your gym? What kind of gym do you go
It's a
to?
CrossFit type gym. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so it's a CrossFit type gym. So you're into CrossFit. So you come with that mentality. My bestie, I know she's listening right now, and she's a CrossFit box owner. So,
Yeah.
I know I have that audience that tunes in. 75 hard. How many times have you done it now? Did you just do it once?
Just that first time.
That first time, but you
Started
just
in
wrapped up,
June.
right? Okay.
Well, so I went all the way through my first try. I did phase one, and I've got phase two. The earliest I can start is the 2nd of December, and I just talked in number 35 and 36 for people I've encouraged or influenced into starting their 75 hard journey. They're starting this Friday too. And so I'm going to start with them and do phase two.
That's incredible. Tell our listeners about it, because I actually don't know anything about it other than it's I don't know, 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside in a cold shower or something like that. I'm very
So it's a complete it's really a mindset and a mental toughness challenge. It's not a workout regimen. It's not a nutrition plan. It is nothing more but the hardest thing you will probably ever do, which is committing to yourself and doing 5 really basic things, which really, if you were to prioritize yourself throughout your day, you would actually do for yourself. The 2 workouts that you mentioned, you don't necessarily need to do 2 workouts, but like you should get up throughout the day, right? And like going for walks is a good thing for you. And the beauty of 75 hard is, while there's no negotiating the requirements of 75 hard, you determine what your 45-minute indoor workout is. You determine what your 45-minute outdoor workout is. You just can't do them back to back and count them as a 1.5 hour workout.
right.
Right. You have to come up with a diet for yourself. For me, it was basically, I needed to stop. My problem is I work from home. And so if I just get started solving problems, like I don't look up until it's like I'm starving and now I've got to get takeout. And so it was getting an actual meal plan and actually following it and taking out all the junk food and all the fast food and actually having clean food. That's not a very difficult diet. I mean, you've got to do a couple of things throughout the week to actually make sure that you're prepared for that day, right? Which again is a good thing overall for
Right.
a 30-year-old who's still learning how to adult.
You're only 30.
But so from there, I thought the biggest difficulty was going to be drinking a gallon of water. I've never been a big water drinker. I've never actually considered drinking a gallon, or do I even come close to it? But with the right intentionality, I now drink more than a gallon a day, just regularly. And if I don't, then like if I ever feel a headache coming on, I'm just like, did you have your water, Mark? No, you didn't. And then you've got to read 10 pages a day. It's got to be nonfiction. It can be like autobiography. Doesn't have to be personal development, but it can't be like Harry Potter, right? Like it's got to be something that's sharpening you in one way or another.
Does it have to be from a book, or do people read like
It
on their
has to be on a
devices?
book. It
I
can't
love
be
that.
on Audible.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Because it's so like I love Audible. Don't get me wrong. I've listened to more books on Audible probably than I've read at this point. But it's too easy and it goes in one ear and out the other. And just having those 10 minutes or maybe more than 10 minutes, depending on how fast somebody reads, but having a physical book and actually flipping the pages and seeing that progression and actually going from cover to cover is something that in reality, up until I did it, like I can't tell you the last time I read a book for personal development. Right.
Right.
I actually started in 2018 after I came out here in Dallas and fell flat on my face. And so before 2018, like I had never read books.
Wow.
Like even the books we had in school. Like
Oh, yeah,
I
no one
love,
reads those.
well, except for 1984. Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we read 1984 and I was like, oh, this is really good.
They need to reinstate that in schools.
Right. And then what else is there? You have to take a personal development picture of yourself. So some sort of selfie, which if I knew going into it was like that is your biggest like enemy. And so I was most scared of just forgetting to take a picture and almost did a couple times. So it almost got me. And I know it's gotten a lot of people, but it teaches you so much about yourself and the whenever you choose hard, the rest of your day tends to be a lot easier, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
what I realized, one of my limiting beliefs has always been the scarcity around time and just how fast time goes away and how fast each day goes by. And what it taught me was when you have, I have the difficulty of, I will very much, the amount of time I allow is the amount of time that it's going to take to solve a problem. And so if I have a bunch of blank spaces in my calendar, like I am no good. Nothing is urgent. And when nothing's urgent, like nothing, as much as you can do a bunch of things, but you're not getting traction in any one direction, right?
I can so relate to that because I got more accomplished when I was in grad school full time working, doing yoga every single day. I still found time to meal prep, clean the house, do whatever you had, party because I was still young,
Right,
like whatever,
right, right.
like, and I have probably an unhealthy sense of urgency. Like a client asked me to do something and like, I have to get to my computer in like, it's probably like a more of a people pleasing way. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I don't understand people who too and it's funny because like in the South, I feel like you guys are much more laid back around time than we are here in Chicago, in Illinois,
Yeah,
like in a more
we're
like you're
Dallas.
you're East, you come from the East Coast, you got to understand that too, like the mentality of around time from Boston to Dallas. I feel like I don't know, but going back
I
to
love the mix
two,
here. I mean, it's definitely got, it's not Alabama,
yeah,
right?
okay.
It's not that slow, but
Georgia is slow too. I
right.
know Georgia's very slow.
But
I
it's
couldn't do
not
Georgia.
New York.
Right.
And it's people actually look up and you
Yeah.
go to restaurants and you can have conversations with people sitting next to you. You don't actually have to sit at the bar to be able to have a conversation. And so it's a great mix of culture and people. And it's because we're the melting pot of America, right? Like America's a melting pot, but like DFW, Dallas Fort Worth has people from everywhere. And at the end of the day, we all become Texans. We love it.
So I want to bring you back one more time to what you said about the scarcity around time. I've brought this up in the group, but I'm going to bring it up again for you and for the listeners. In the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, you're going to love it. He's a pastor out of Seattle.
That was
Um,
really quick. Say that again.
The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And in the
We'll get it
book,
after the show, but
yes,
for the listeners.
yes, in the book, he talks about even if you had more time, what would you do with it? You'd fill it with more stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the whole concept is just like slowing down and taking things in and setting up the processes and setting up yourself and like kind of like you talk a lot about choosing your hard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I highly recommend that book. Um okay, so where we left off was 75 hard, the selfie. I wanted to ask like what is the biggest change do you see in yourself? Is it physical? Is it something, a look in your eye? Is it the quality of your skin, the bags under your eyes? Like what do you see changing in these selfies?
Well, so for me, I have ADHD, which we can talk about for another hour. And while that's my superpower, it's also like my kryptonite, right? And so my biggest problem was I really wasn't actually like feeding myself. Like I was just head down working and like snacking here and there, but like I wasn't eating healthy. And so I just became like really, really skinny. And like that's the opposite of what like most Americans are feeling, right? Like most people are starting 75 hard to lose weight in one way or another. No, I was doing it to actually like reprioritize my body, my health, and actually like be able to go in the mirror naked after a shower and just like feel confident and like look good, right? And for me, it's I wasn't in that place for arguably the first time in my life. And that started to erode my self confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you mentioned, I mean, the ability to look yourself in the mirror and speak good words over yourself without actually faking it, like there's something mentally behind it where
Yeah.
it's not a lie anymore and you're
Yeah.
actually appreciating and grateful for your body.
I like that you brought up the faking it part because I think a lot of people fake it. And
And
the
you
whole
and
fake it
sometimes
till
you
you
have to in
make
the
it.
beginning.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
with that, it's in a way you do have to, right? Because it's you can't just talk down on yourself, but
Right.
at the same time, you have to do something about it. If you feel that feeling about yourself, that's your spirit telling you that you're not doing what it wants you to do, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so actually doing it and then looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "Hey, I did the things I said I was going to do." You can look at yourself with your back a little bit straighter, your eyes a little bit higher, and it's a good feeling.
And I think it comes down to like knowing it kind of comes back to knowing and listening to yourself. And I think a lot of people they listen to the negative, they don't quite listen to the positive, and a lot of times we just go to the things that numb us out because we cannot be alone with ourselves. I think that is another big
It's huge.
yeah.
And it
Um
was one of the things we didn't really, I didn't bring it up, but I mean, the 75 hard journey, and you've really only met me after a dark place at in like late May after I just turned 30. I went on a bunch of trips, came back from Mexico with COVID, had like the worst brain fog, and was like in the biggest funk. And I realized like at the end of the funk, the reason why I was in that funk was I'd gotten comfortable again.
mm,
And so I threw myself right back outside my comfort zones. And all of a sudden, you and I connected, myself and so many other new people have connected just because I stepped outside that comfort zone.
yeah, it's nothing good. It lives inside a comfort zone. Like it really
It's where
doesn't.
we go to die.
Yeah, yeah,
It's where our
absolutely.
spirit goes to die.
Absolutely. And so many people are there and it's unfortunate. What is your message to the world in terms of getting out of their comfort zone? What's the how piece? Because we can tell people to do it till we're blue in the face. What do you think is the most powerful how do you do it?
I think it's different for everybody, right? Like my comfort zones are not the same as your comfort zones. And so the advice to like one off individuals is going to be very different.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we feel the feelings we feel. And after going through my kind of spiritual journey, I realized like that's just your spirit, right? And so if you, as the human, are thinking this could be something cool, but that's super scary, like that's what you need to do. And that's different for everybody. But you mentioned we have to limit the amount of time we spend with ourselves. But at the end of the day, like I realized when I had broken up with my ex, I had been in back to back to back to back to back to back relationships with girls. And I really just relied on them to make the decisions on what we're doing and where we're going and like what are we doing. And like I never had any control over my day. And so having that self time and actually learning who I am as a man and learning the things that actually what are driving me and what are those things that I do want to pursue and figuring out that that sounds really scary. Like that's the exercise that I took that helped me change everything. And so COVID was really scary for a lot of people. But for a lot of other people, that alone time enabled them to actually make all of the changes that they needed in their lives, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to be careful isolating ourselves, but at the same time, as a introverted extrovert, like I need some of that alone time, and I need to work through my own thoughts and ideas and actually do what feels right to me.
Yeah, and I don't think that we need to limit our alone time. I think we need to get comfortable being alone, because I think the first thing people do is go to Netflix, the phone,
Mm-hmm.
the drinking, like
Right.
whatever it is, right? Because yeah, yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. Let's tell people how they can connect with you and find you. Are you doing any coaching? Are you or anything on the
No, I've
side
been
here? You got a
asked.
side hustle?
No, I mean, if anybody needs help with anything, like I'm always there for you. That's who I am. I'm definitely most active on Facebook, but you can really find all of my information on my digital business card. It's mark10k.com, as in mark10k.com. You can connect with me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on most of the platforms, but definitely most active on Facebook. That's really where I built my initial organic following when I moved out here, and it definitely still, as the middle-aged millennial that I am, it's definitely the most native for me. But I'm on Instagram as well. But just reach out to me. I'm an open book. Happy to share with you my story, but would love to learn yours and see how I can help you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put your links in the episode notes as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Mark. I feel like we have not even scratched the surface of who you are. And and it's fun. We'll have to dive deeper, because we like I said, we just touched on a lot of really big topics today, but we didn't go deep, and I know that you have the ability to share so much more. So I look forward to that. But again, thank you for your time.
You are so welcome. The last thing I would say is, I know your show is really the audio show, but you'll never catch me without a smile on my face. And so if you're watching the recording, if Jill actually puts out the recording of the video here, you'll see both she and I just have big smiles on our face, and that's really how I'm known. And that's really what I try to be, is just bring in that positive energy and a light and a good mood to the room.
I love that. Thank you for being the light.
Thank you for listening to my mom's